Welcome to the Rock Worldwide Show here on WSHO Sunshine 800 AM. I am Trey Roberts, your humble host for the next hour. I believe we have a great program for you. I don't know if that will actually turn out to be the case, but we're going to try our best. And if you want to be a part of the program, you can go to WSHO.com. Scroll down toward the bottom of the screen, and when you get there, punch in your name like I'm doing right now, and then sign into the chat room. And there you can make comments, you can ask questions. We'll be watching there throughout the day. We are also live, not just on WSHO, but we are also live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. If you go to any of those and just type in Kingdom Useful or the Rock Worldwide Show with Trey Roberts, you will find us there, and you will see why I do radio and I don't do very much television. I have a lot to get to today. There is, sometimes I feel like it's my responsibilities. I find this moral compulsion to try and to help people think well. I know how important it is for me to think well. I really work very, very hard in my personal life to constantly be considering how I'm thinking about things and how I'm thinking through things, and if I'm thinking well about things, and if what I'm thinking is healthful to me. Is it causing me to conform to the character of Christ? Is it causing me to have fear and anxiety? Is it pushing me more toward the image of God, or is it pushing me away from people and loving others? And is it causing me to lose sleep? Am I finding myself annoyed and short with my family? All of these things that we don't realize. We consume so much media, whether it's social media or legacy media. We consume so much information that oftentimes, for many of us, even though we think that we are going to reliable, unbiased sources, sometimes just recognizing that the sources that we go and look at, those sources may feel right, but the feeling that we get from watching a source or reading a source from information that we trust, that feeling that what they're saying is right may just be confirmation bias. The way you know this is go to a source where you already have sort of a preconceived notion that they're not trustworthy or reliable. If you're able to go to a source that is already not trustworthy or reliable, if you can listen or watch or read an entire segment, an article, and there's no cognitive bias, well, then that's an indication that maybe on a particular issue or whatever it is that you're getting information about, that you may have a very global perspective on it. And by global perspective, I mean like you have this, you have both sides of the argument. If it's a hard dichotomy, if you're a conservative, if you're a really conservative person, it's going to be very difficult for you to ever watch CNN, to ever turn on MSNBC and be able to stomach. Likewise, if you're a hard leftist, it's going to be very difficult for you to turn on Fox News or watch Glenn Beck or listen to Sean Hannity. And the difficulty in it is the confirmation bias. So one of the things that I try to offer here, and I know many of you Yeah, I can tell by the responses inside of the chat rooms and things of that sort. Um, what's up, Derek? So I know that many of you. Only thing I try to offer here is you don't like me because I'm not a partisan hack. Like if you push back against me, it's just because I'm not waving the pom poms for your team. And what I'm trying to say is I'm trying to draw everybody out of their tribal corners. I'm trying to pull people out of thinking that everything that the GOP does is good and everything that the Democrats do is bad, or everything that the left does is good and everything that the right does is racist and bigoted. Like I'm trying to pull people out, and I'm trying to kind of help you to have like a kingdom perspective. If the kingdom of God is upon us right now and Jesus is ruling and reigning, then we ought to be more loyal to the kingdom of God than we are about the country of origin that we sit in. And that's not to say that we shouldn't be responsible citizens of the country that we reside in. That's not to say that we shouldn't vote responsibly and think about public policy responsibly. But everything and everyone and families and people and groups of people are very, very complex. There are no simple answers. Simple answers, we love to eat them up. We love to gobble them up, and we love to eat them up because they make sense to us and they're easily digestible. But when we have to start unpacking layers upon layers upon layers upon layers, and we get deeper and deeper, and it requires specialized knowledge to make sense of, like if you're reading something and you just can't pronounce the word in what you're reading, if what you're reading is simply above someone's potential reading level, it's going to make getting the information from that particular article and then comprehending it to move toward application of the knowledge, it's going to make it that much more difficult. So the only thing that I attempt to do here is to bring you information that isn't Chicken Little, that isn't the sky falling, that isn't these people are evil and these people are good. It isn't the kind of tribalism that you get in legacy media. It isn't, this show is not run by an algorithm. This isn't going to just feed you more of what you already have a bloodlust for. This show, if it goes against your preconceived notions, then you should give me an hour of your week and allow me to break down your fundamental presuppositions about topics. And like today's going to be another topic where we talk in great detail about all things COVID-19, because I listen to and I see information being put out for public consumption, and I see it in the church, I see it on Christian radio, I hear it on Christian radio, I see it on social media in very conservative, very Christian, very religious sites, and people are working in an either or false paradigm. And I think it's just important for us that in the time that we're in, that there be some place, some voice that attempts to be a voice of a clear path through all the noise. That's all I'm hoping to offer. And listen, that might be purely hubris on my part. I get it. But I do think that I can offer a little something if people are willing to tune in, if people are willing to be a part of what we're doing here at the Rock Worldwide Show. So all that being said, let us get into our first topic. And I feel like I need to like reset the table here. I hear people talk about coronavirus and I hear people talk about COVID-19 as though they are the same thing. This is one of the most important things for us to think about when it comes to this whole issue of the vaccines and mandates and treatments and everything. We have to start back with this fundamental. Coronavirus, or SARS-CoV-2, the severe acute respiratory syndrome, coronavirus 2, is a virus that has never been found in nature, whether in animals or in humans. And since most coronaviruses start within animals, they have never jumped from animals to humans in the history of humanity. Now that's important, because if you believe that this thing, that the earth and the universe is 6,000 years old, there's nothing in 6,000 year history. If you believe that humanity is basically 14 million years old, there's nothing that's been in our biological evolution that would give us information, learned information by way of infection to fight SARS-CoV-2. That means that, first of all, beyond just SARS-CoV-2 being a laboratory created or laboratory modified bat coronavirus from Wuhan, China, unleashed on the world, besides that fact, the fact that it's a lab created or a lab modified virus, that means that it's going to go into the human body, because that's what they were attempting to do, was make it more virulent to getting into human beings, replicating very fast, creating severe COVID-19, which is coronavirus disease 2019. It's the first time we've ever had this disease. Now remember, viruses in and of themselves, let's go through this progression. You can become infected with coronavirus and be asymptomatic, never ever develop COVID-19 or show symptoms of COVID-19. You can also be pre-symptomatic. Right now, the best data out there says between 8 to 13 days, you can be infected with coronavirus. And whether you're asymptomatic and never show symptoms, or you're pre-symptomatic and will eventually show symptoms, while you're infected with coronavirus, you can spread coronavirus and infect other people. If you develop COVID, that's typically when people start to question, oh no, I need to go get a COVID test, not a coronavirus test, a COVID test. And you either test positive or negative for COVID. We're going to talk in the latter part of the show about what India has been doing. And you're going to understand why it's so effective. And it shouldn't be something that is done in place of necessarily vaccines, but it can be something that we can look to and try to understand why it's effective and what we can do here to hopefully be effective in our treatments. Because remember, now that we're about 2 years in, we kind of have some data now in terms of treatment as to some paths forward, how the virus works, even how the mutations have worked. We'll get into that a little bit toward the bottom half of the hour of the program. So if you have COVID-19, of course, you can spread it. And if you have COVID-19, you're going to get infected with the coronavirus, which will then potentially develop into another case of COVID-19. So let's remember that coronavirus, just like, I'm not making these viruses the same thing. So don't misquote me on my analogy here. But we've been dealing with this one that I've been talking about, so it should make sense to you. In the same way that Magic Johnson has tested positive since 1994 maybe, with HIV, he has never then, because he had and immediately began to treat the virus, human immunodeficiency virus, he has never developed AIDS, acquired immune deficiency syndrome. AIDS is the disease, HIV is the virus. So if we can keep the virus either suppressed, isolated, or eradicated in the body, then we can prevent the virus, any virus, from ravishing the body, creating the disease that more likely than not can lead to death if the disease is unable to be treated. Now, we've got several decades now of treating AIDS and HIV. So most people now that contract HIV, whether through lifestyle choices or blood transfusions or intravenous drug use, we now have things that can treat and prevent once you test positive for either the virus or for the disease. But in many cases, sometimes those treatments are not able to prevent the inevitable, and people oftentimes succumb to those to AIDS and the disease and so on and so forth. But I want you to think about, and just remind as we set the table here, remember, you're going to hear news media and very uninformed people talk almost synonymously about coronavirus and COVID-19. One is the disease, one is the virus. You say, well, Trey, what's the purpose of constantly resetting the table? Because it helps us to know what the purpose of the vaccines. What were we trying to vaccinate people from? Let's move now into the vaccine discussion. The vaccines, just to be clear, were not meant to prevent you from getting infected from coronavirus. They were not purposed to help create or prevent the spread of coronavirus to other people. The hope is that maybe that will be a side benefit of these COVID-19 vaccines. But since it's a COVID-19 vaccine, it's to vaccinate you against the disease, not from getting infected with coronavirus. Now, and again, this little fact right here is going to be vitally important when we get to what India is doing. Okay, so just stay with me. Please be patient with me. I see you guys in the chat room. I see you, Paul from Mississippi. I see you, North Shore, and see you, Greg. Y'all just stay there for a second. I'll read your comments in just a moment. I promise. The purpose of the vaccines was to prevent severe COVID-19. How? By the mRNA vaccines, which is the Pfizer and Moderna. Those vaccines were they were to basically teach your immune system to create spike protein, and then upon creating spike protein, basically put up a wanted poster inside of your body to go after that immune system, go after that particular spike protein when you see it, the moment it comes into the body. Because the spike protein is the type of protein that is all over a single molecule or cell of coronavirus. So the beauty of the mRNA vaccines is, number one, we don't actually have to create an infection response like the Johnson & Johnson. The Johnson & Johnson is the old technology, the adenovirus type of vaccines. It puts a dormant small amount of the actual disease into you, and your body then turns around and it actually triggers a real immune response from actually being infected in a minor way. That's the Johnson & Johnson. The new mRNA vaccines, these are vaccines that have been in effect for 50 years and just never had the funding until the Trump administration came through and put Operation Warp Speed into it. All right. So the purpose is not to prevent anything with coronavirus except to teach your immune system that a virus that it's never seen inside of all of humanity for all of human history, that the learning curve becomes shorter, that it now knows, hey, go get this, go knock it out. And if it can begin to attack the coronavirus before it replicates unattacked by the immune system, well, then you hope that it can create a lesser, you'd love it to prevent all COVID-19. It's a little unrealistic, probably a lot unrealistic. But if you can prevent severe COVID-19, then you can prevent hospitalization. And if you can prevent hospitalization, you can prevent a 50-50 chance that you make it out of the hospital. The vaccines are there to prevent death. You need to keep that in mind. Keep in mind, you should not find it odd that as the vaccines become more and more and more, we as a society become more vaccinated, that you see breakthrough cases. Breakthrough cases just mean that more people are getting vaccinated. That's a good thing. What you won't see, though, is you won't see more death. You're going to get to a place to where the overwhelming majority, and in places like the UK, we were going to have Christopher Snowdon on today, and I'm going to do a special podcast with him. Christopher Snowdon, if you want to do something really interesting today, type in Christopher Snowdon, Quillette, COVID cranks, and please read that article. I was going to have him on the show today. He's in the UK. He couldn't call us. We couldn't call him. It's an international call. It'll cost us both a ton of money. So we didn't do it, but we were going to talk to him about an article that he wrote. So we'll do a special podcast for that. So follow us on any of our social media sites, and you can catch that podcast when we do it. So anyway, so back to the if you look in the UK right now, the UK is showing that the overwhelming majority of people that die with or of COVID, whether from COVID alone or with comorbidities, that the overwhelming majority of the deaths since the vaccines became public have been the unvaccinated, to the tune of like 57,000 plus deaths of unvaccinated people versus 564 deaths of people with the vaccine. Okay, that's a stark difference. Okay, it's a stark difference. Okay, so here's another aspect of this. And actually, before I get to this point, what I want to do is I want to go into the chat room, and because I don't want to get too far. North Shore said, the problem is we are not calling evil evil, our sins or sins sin. Okay, because we're talking more about biology, North Shore, than we are theology or ecclesiology. So I'm not sure. Okay. Paul in Mississippi, or just Paul Miss, I'm assuming that means Paul in Mississippi, said, just takes common sense to know that much of what we are hearing concerning this so-called worldwide epidemic. Okay, so see, look there, Paul. If it's a worldwide, it can't be an epidemic, brother. Like, come on, like you don't even understand your terms. An epidemic is when something is like a virus spreading through one particular country. Once it jumps to continents, that's why it's called a pandemic. So you just called the epidemic worldwide. That's a pandemic. Okay, so it's not that it's false, but maybe you don't understand the difference between a pandemic and an epidemic. Would be the only one ever that has a 99% survival rate. Well, okay, very good there, Paul in Mississippi. But let me ask you this. What is 1%? What is 1% of 7 billion people? I'll let you do the math and get back with me on that. But that's what we're trying to prevent. Paul in Mississippi. So what's the purpose of creating a worldwide panic? Well, first of all, Paul, there is a ton of people, okay, including government officials. And this is why I'm going into this next point here. Please separate the political ramifications of politicians, governments, and elected officials making decisions about COVID-19 and the spread of the coronavirus versus the medical facts and the data that we can look at in real time. If you conflate those two, you're going to come to and arrive at erroneous conclusions. You're not going to be able to think well about what we're talking about. Here's an example in my own personal life. I'm fully vaccinated. Why? Because I looked at the data and the vaccine was both safe and effective. Safe in that I had a very small chance of having a adverse reaction, and effective in that it seems to be preventing severe COVID-19 and therefore hospitalization and therefore death. So for me, I had comorbidities. One of the best things you can do, by the way, I'm 67 pounds down from 66 from 6 weeks ago. So anybody out there who prayed for me, I appreciate you very much for praying. I had asked for some prayer on a surgery, and I had weight loss surgery, and it's doing great. I feel great. I'm trying to get healthy. That's probably one of the best things that I can do, because COVID-19 is killing fat people. Just letting you know. Okay. So if you're fat and you're not vaxxed, you're a prime, and you're over 55, you're a prime candidate to die. Just giving you a heads up on that. Okay. So the political versus the medical. So I'm vaxxed fully because I found the vaccine to be safe and effective. But I also don't believe that the federal government should mandate the vaccine. You see, it's really quite simple. You cannot agree with top-down mandates and yet still understand that medically this might be the safest vaccine we've ever given. Go listen to the podcast with Congressman Trey Gowdy and a doctor from South Carolina that they talked about for 30 minutes. She was unbelievable in her giving of facts and her lane. She explains it very clearly. And the comment that she made in that particular podcast was, this may be, of all the vaccines that we've given in the last 50 years, this may be one of the safest ever. Because we can now look at the trial patients, the people that before the vaccine even came out, we can look at the trial patients of the COVID-19 vaccines, and we can see that overwhelmingly there's not even enough adverse reaction for it to even like hit our radar. There's no long-term effects, and we're over 2 years now into the trial phase. So we can look back at the trial patients and just the effects, or the lack thereof, of the effects, adverse effects from the vaccine. Go listen to that podcast. Trey Gowdy talks to a doctor from South Carolina. I highly recommend it. Back to the chat room real quick. Paul says, it is time to stand up and reclaim our rights and freedoms. Now they are saying they will need to get another shot every 6 months. Where does it stop? Well, again, hey, it's getting ready to be flu season, and I'm going to go get my flu vaccine. Okay. And I do that about once a year. So maybe COVID is sort of like that. And maybe Paul, I don't know, maybe it stops when we get to a certain level, and maybe it stops when we get a new president. Maybe it stops when we stand up and we don't allow state legislatures across the United States of America, or we don't allow governors all across America to do mandatory mail-in voting. Maybe if we stand up and don't allow our local and state governments to like run roughshod over the American people, the citizenry, maybe if we hold our state and local officials accountable for not protecting us from an overarching federal leviathan, maybe then we can put a stop to it. But as long as we keep playing this whole reality show version of Washington, D.C., like, we're not supposed to be that involved in Washington, D.C., and we're more involved with Washington, D.C. than we are in our local parish governments and our local county governments and our local school boards and our local state legislatures and gubernatorial races. We care more about the 435 members of Congress and the 100 members in the Senate and the Supreme Court. We care more about that. And if we knew anything at all about the Constitution, that was not the intention of the founders. Get interested in more. If you want to take back your government, start by taking back your school board. Start by taking back your parish council. Start by taking back your county, your sheriffs, your aldermen. And then move to your state legislative members, state senators, state representatives, governor's office, the AGs, the judges. There's enough for you to pay attention to that affects you on a daily basis that's not centered in Washington, D.C. It's part of the trick. So as it pertains to coronavirus and COVID-19 and vaccines, there's enough information now to where we know we can make a choice to move toward health or to move away toward health. But I do believe that you should be free to make that decision for yourself. And I know many of you do. So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Separate the political from the medical. Do the right thing. And if you look, talk to your doctor. Talk to your doctor. Just ask your doctor, do you think I should get the vaccine? The doctor says yes. Then what? Now all of a sudden you're not going to trust your doctor? I mean, most of us go to the doctor that we've been going to for a very long time. So go to your doctor, the doctor you trust, ask him the simple question, do you think the vaccine's right for me? If you've had COVID, he or she will probably tell you no, you've got antibodies. And then you've got your doctor's recommendation there. If you've had COVID-19, it's been 6, 7, 8 months since you've had COVID-19, maybe just a one-shot booster is good for you to continue protecting you for the next 6 to 12 months. I mean, it's really quite simple. What I'm saying is let's get away from the conspiracy theories. Okay, look. Let me try and let me do this. It was said that all the animals, I've heard it said that all the animals died during the COVID-19 trials. Okay? That's just not true. Regardless of who said it on social media, it's just 100% true. There are posts all over social media claiming that COVID-19 vaccine producers, they skipped the animal trials due to those animals in those trials dying. That's false. Pfizer, BioNTech, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, they've all been granted emergency authorization by the FDA in the United States, and they all conducted animal trials. And none of them had significant safety concerns to report. Okay, this is Reuters. Okay, this is international news. This is not NBC fact check. This is not this is just fact. Like, you have to know where to go get good facts from. That's not true. So don't make that claim. Another claim that I've heard people say is that vaccinated people are 6 times more likely to die from the Delta variant. That's just not true. It's very misleading. Or that somehow vaccinated people are causing these mutations. That's not true. That's not how diseases mutate. That's just completely wrong. Again, social media posts all over the place have claimed that those who have received the COVID-19 vaccine are 6 times more likely to die from being infected by variants than those who have not been inoculated. Okay, and there was information taken out of context from the Public Health England briefing in June. So several blogs spread the claim, screenshot the blogs, and they're being used on social media. That's what I'm saying. Get off of social media. If you're already an anti-vaxxer or you're already anti-COVID-19 vaccines, social media is just going to give you more of posts and information that already supports that. Be aware. So let's talk about if I don't know if you've heard about this gentleman. I recently found him very recently. Let me just make sure the chat room is done here. Let's see. Do more research, not what you have been fed, to put fear in you, so to control your life. Not sure who you're talking to, Novax, because I don't feed. I go get my own food. I'm not fed anything. And that's actually what I'm trying to recommend you to do is don't feed what you're given. So if you go to social media, you're being fed. If you go to YouTube, you're being fed. You understand? Like, the algorithm feeds you. Okay? If you don't know where to go, you can't buy the right information. You can't get the right information. You're being fed. Everything Big Pharma has told us has proved to be lies while they're making billions. Wake up. Don't be a lab rat. Okay, Novax, are you an anti-capitalist? Is that what you are, Novax? I'm asking. Roger was just like this one here. Was big proponent of the shot. Had both, and also had 2 friends who died from the virus after the shots. I now have crippling pains for days at a time. Roger, where are you from, brother? Sal, none of this adds up. Something is very wrong with all we are told. Yeah, Sal, there's a lot. Everything adds up to me. I, I've spent the time to try to make sense, Sal. And that's what I'm trying to do here. So stick around with us. So we're going to take medical advice, which really is not from some mousy looking doctor who's nothing but a political hack. Okay. No, don't listen to Dr. Fauci. If you don't want to listen to Dr. Fauci, don't listen to Dr. Fauci. I think he's the worst person to be the face of the public health in our United States, but that's just the position that he holds now. Go talk to your own doctor, Paul, in Mississippi. But do you doubt all doctors? Find a doctor that you trust and then talk to that doctor. Make him or her your doctor, Paul. You're in America, you can do it. Come on, man. Yeah, that's what I'm saying to you, Paul. Come on, man. You should get the shot if you have not, and let everyone decide for themselves if it's so great. Yeah, listen, I agree. Listen, I think the shot is good. If somebody asked me, I would recommend that they get the shot, unless they were extremely young or unless they already had the natural immunities. Paul, two things can be true at the same time. I can think that mandates are wrong, and I can think that the shots are good. Just because I think the shots are helpful, just because I think that they do their job and they're safe, doesn't mean that I necessarily have to. I don't have to agree with the mandate, and neither do you. Michelle, why is a ministry channel using this to have us put a dangerous substance in our body? Michelle, I'm not telling you to put this in your body. Please, why are you visiting a Christian station and then lying about what's being put on here? Here's the thing, Michelle. You want me to come on here and say, nobody should get the vaccine. Vaccine evil, mark of the beast. Like, you want me to come on here and espouse some religious zealotry about what this is a slippery slope toward the mark of the beast and Bill Gates and Anthony Fauci and microchipping and like, I'm trying to wade through, Michelle. I'm trying to wade through all of the buffoonery and all of the conspiracy theory. That's what we do here at our show. Let me go to real quick here to our social media chats. Derek Collinsworth said, "If you're a constitutionalist, Fox and CNN are poopy." I agree. Derek also said, "This is what I need. Be careful. I'm going to talk. Take your words. I think he meant take your words literally." Gloria Miller, COVID-22 is on the way. No, it's not, Gloria. You don't have to worry about that. COVID is a mild to moderate virus, according to the World Health Organization. Yeah, for the mass majority of people. But if you have 4.5 comorbidities and you happen to be maybe 55 years or older, then it's not. It's not a mild to moderate disease. And it's not okay for people to have mild to moderate disease, and the people who that would affect, that it wouldn't be mild to moderate for, that they get infected. Do you understand right now, if this was Ebola, we would all be vaccinated right now? You realize that with no questions asked, right? COVID-19 PCR tests are meaningless. Though the whole world relies on the RT-PCR to diagnose SARS-CoV-2 infection, the science is clear. They are not fit for purpose. You know what, Gloria? I wouldn't disagree with you on that. 344 FDA approved drugs were recalled in 2020. Derek, what's those numbers again, bro? Death facts. In the UK, 3 weeks ago, a study came out that showed that 57,000 unvaxxed people died with or of COVID, and only 564 vaccinated people had died of COVID. Let's see. I got the Johnson & Johnson in April, and overweight and asthmatic. Why I chose? Yeah, it's common sense, Derek. Big fellas like us in otherwise relatively good health, if you've got a couple of comorbidities and you're nearing that 55 number, then it might be wisdom for you to get a vaccine. If you're the epitome of health and you run 6 days a week and you're not overweight and you don't have any genetic illnesses, you may want to hold off. If you've gotten COVID, it's common sense. All right. It's common sense. All right. Let's get back to the show here. Dr. Campbell. If you've not heard about Dr. John Campbell, I just recently found out about him. Go check him out. He's on YouTube. Someone I trust told me to go look into him, and I did. And he was very interesting. He's explaining what's being put out in the news in India. As most of us know, if we've been following this whole thing, India had severe COVID-19 breakouts, and it was really bad, but they seem to have gotten it under control. So I want to talk a little bit about what they did in India. And I want you to pay attention to what they did in India, because you're going to hear some things that may immediately push you to just go, oh, you see, there it is. There it is. That's the proof I'm looking for right there. And the truth is that this is quite nuanced and needs a little bit of unpacking. So here's what happened in India. In India, tons of people, like second most populous country in the world. So when COVID starts to really spread and do its thing, it puts a lot of people at risk. In fact, in this one province, they had a 10% hospitalization rate. But when you have 204 million people in this one northern province of India, and mostly young people, you're talking about 20.4 million people that have to go into the hospitals. Okay, that's overwhelming. So you go, oh, 90% of people who got COVID didn't need to be hospitalized. That's great. Yeah, that is 90-10 is great, but 10% out of 204 million is not great. Okay, that's still too high. But here's what they did. They created, and remember, India kind of got hit a little bit late in the game, all things considered. So they were able to kind of look around, and they had more data when it came to trying to figure out what's the best path forward. And what they started doing was they started taking patients who tested positive for COVID-19 in the very early days of their positive test. And like Gloria said just a few minutes ago on our social media chat, they were using the better test, not the ones that we use here. Okay, we'll actually talk about some of the things that they did, because some of the things that they did, you, ladies and gentlemen, out there in the listening audience, you wouldn't be in favor of. But here's what they did. They gave everyone a pulse ox meter so that you could test your own oxygenated blood. Okay. They gave people, and typically, by the way, the pulse ox meter is the little thing that goes on like your finger when you're in a hospital, like being triaged, and it's able to sort of tell how much oxygen you're getting in your bloodstream. Okay. They gave everyone digital thermometers. They gave everybody what's called paracetamol. Now, paracetamols are illegal. They've been banned in the United States, but they sort of just been renamed. Paracetamols around the rest of the world is basically acetaminophen. So they give you Tylenol to help with the fever, okay? And any other sort of little aches and pains. They gave you a basic pain medicine. They prescribed and sent people home with vitamin C. They prescribed and gave them and sent them home with a multivitamin with zinc. They gave them vitamin D3. They gave them ivermectin. They gave them doxycycline. Now, I'll stop here for a second. They thought that early on the doxycycline would be very helpful against COVID-19. As time went on, the doxycycline didn't have any effect on the COVID-19. What they did notice, though, is that the doxycycline helped to prevent secondary bacterial infections, which is good, because you don't want an immune system that's already depressed by trying to fight the coronavirus and COVID-19, and then you get a bacterial infection and then there's not enough immunity strength. So the doxycycline helped to kill secondary bacterial infections. Remember, we're talking about extreme poor, poverty, dirty, low hygiene places like northern India. They sent them home in one particular province. Added to this protocol here that I'm laying out for you, they sent out, they gave them vitamin B as well. Not all of India, but in this one particular province. They gave them face masks. They sent them home with hand sanitizer, alcohol wipes, and gloves. All that should seem pretty basic. I've told you this, so this won't be new. Before I decided to do the vaccine, I did a prophylactic and still am in the 6-month prophylactic of using hydroxychloroquine. I take it once a week on Mondays, and daily I take the recommended dosage of vitamin D, zinc, vitamin C, a multivitamin. this is not strange to me. And I take hydroxychloroquine because ivermectin wasn't really recommended as a prophylactic. But here's what they did, and this was what was really, really important. And then I'm going to come back to kind of tell you about ivermectin. First thing they did was they targeted their testing. So they didn't give tests for everybody. That's why, like Gloria said in the chat room, this is our test the way we do it here, where everybody gets a test. If you think you've been exposed to it, if you think you got it, just go take a test. That's not really an effective way to test for the particular virus. You should allow people to start to feel symptomatic, take the test, and then when did you first start feeling symptomatic? If it's within the first 5 days, we can treat it differently than if it's post 5 days and if it's further on. So we should limit testing to people that need it, actually. They did a really good job with their public health campaign in India doing early detection. So they caught the virus early, which means they caught the virus early. Therefore, they caught it before it became COVID-19. So if you can catch it and find out that you're infected with the virus, then you can treat the virus, but you don't know that you have the virus until you become symptomatic. And when you become symptomatic, you already have COVID-19. This is important because the next part is contact tracing. So when LaToya, the destroyer here in New Orleans, decided that she was going to make, if you go into businesses and restaurants, you to sign up and put your name, and everybody exploded. Oh, this is tyranny. Well, no, this is contact tracing. Because if we find out that someone on there tested positive for COVID, we may be able to catch a person that's been infected by this person after being exposed to them and catch early detection. But Americans pushed back because we thought that was infringing upon our civil liberties and our freedom and all that. We didn't understand the benefit of contact tracing in this new pandemic that we were in. They also, and by the way, they were very skilled in India at this contact tracing. Isolation. So once someone tested positive, they isolated them. This was a very well practiced, this was a very well supported, and it was a very well enforced policy to isolate people. Well, again, that doesn't work because you tell people to go home and stay home and they don't want to listen. Can't tell me what to do. They also gave these kits in a timely manner. The kit that I just laid out to you, they gave it to them in a timely manner, and they gave it to them for free because the cost for that whole thing that I just mentioned was only $2.65, according to Dr. Campbell's reports. And when the people went home, they stayed home. They stayed under their doctor's supervision. They got their ivermectin kit. And if oxygen levels dipped below 90%, they were recommended for hospitalization. Now, take a look at this real quick. If you can catch someone, and let's talk just for a second in case you don't know this, why is ivermectin such an important how do I say this? Ivermectin has become kind of the center of treating and has real potential in treating coronavirus and absolutely no data to back up treating COVID-19. Let me explain what I mean. Very early on, some of the doctors from the FLCC, the frontline critical care clinicians, they went scouring the medical journals looking for something that prevents the replication of viruses. And what they found was there was a study done in monkey kidneys. And they found that if you applied a 10 times greater dose than what would normally be given to a human being to the monkey kidney, the virus that was in the monkey kidney could not replicate. Now, there had been no real, this is an anti-parasite disease. This helps with river blindness from these little eye worms. And it also helps within deworming. There's a veterinary, an animal version of this. The monkey kidney study, these doctors said, look, it's clearly been safe for humans, so there's no harm in trying it. And so if we can catch people who test positive with coronavirus and we give them ivermectin early enough, it may not cause them to develop COVID-19 because we may be able to. This was the theory. The theory was if we can prevent coronavirus from replicating, then we can prevent COVID-19 because no one's ever going to die from coronavirus, but many people have died from COVID-19. That's why it's important to think and understand this. So that's where that came from, and they said let's try it. It's not like it's unsafe. It's been safe. It's FDA approved. However, it is important to note that ivermectin isn't FDA approved to treat COVID-19. But you know what it is? The vaccines. You know what it is? Resveratrol, or however you say that particular medicine. And they're pushing for more. Now listen, at this point, we need to understand, just like we need to understand the difference between coronavirus and we need to understand the difference between COVID-19, we also need to understand the difference between antibiotics and antivirals and antiparasitics and antifungals. They don't all deal or do the same. They don't deal with the same things and they don't do the same things. So the reason that there's pushback from doctors is because they're like, why would I give for a virus that's only been shown to be effective in a monkey kidney in an isolated incidence and a dosage of ivermectin that would be potentially harmful for human beings? I would never prescribe that amount for human beings. Why would I give an antiparasitic for a treatment to a virus? And some of the critical care doctors made the decision that since it's not illegal for us to do it, we're going to try it. And it seems in some cases that maybe it does work. In India's case, it seems like it has. But the key to the kit working in India is that contact tracing, targeted testing, early detection, so that you catch people in that 8 to 13 day pre-symptomatic phase. If you can catch people in that pre-symptomatic phase, then the ivermectin could be potentially beneficial. Again, we don't know because there haven't been enough reliable studies of specifically that virus, specifically that disease, specifically that drug, and specifically in that window in a big enough way. So keep in mind that not all drugs are created equal. I know we also have a very big distrust in big pharma, and so I understand that you look at big pharma, but look, remember, Merck is the company that owns ivermectin. If ivermectin was really this super duper treatment for COVID-19, they would put it out there. So what do you have? You have on all of the websites and all of social media and whatnot, you have posts like this. You have the claim. Here's I'm looking at a copy of a social media, of an Instagram post. In other news, Pfizer is testing ivermectin, now renamed PF07321332, to help with COVID. They have done this so they can make this drug more expensive than ivermectin, despite the fact they are the same drug. And they're claiming that they're calling it Pfizermectin. Okay. That's just not true. Okay. Pfizer is developing an oral COVID-19 drug. Here's the claim. Pfizer is claiming, the claim is that Pfizer is developing an oral COVID-19 drug that is just a clone of the anti-parasite drug ivermectin. That's false. It's just not true. And that's not what Merck has done. Merck just yesterday said that we have a drug called molnupiravir. Okay. And Merck said that this, in their studies, their internal studies, they are asking for the FDA to give them emergency approval because now there is a pill that cuts hospitalization down by 50%. Okay. And so people hearing that Merck, the same people who own ivermectin, knowing that ivermectin is not, in some places, not really thought to be useful or helpful, they see this as a money grab on the part of Merck. Listen, guys, I don't have a problem with pharmaceutical companies making drugs and making money from those drugs. It's a great racket if you can get into it. And I don't find it to be some moral obligation on the part of drug companies. I believe that there is legislation that we can pass that can make drug prices go down. Like, let us shop drugs where it is cheaper. Let us buy drugs from Canada if the same drug is cheaper in Canada. Don't prevent us from doing. There's things that we can do instead of trying to push back against these companies putting out products and services that are all together. But I can tell you what this new molnupiravir isn't. It isn't ivermectin renamed. Okay, and that's just like that's just another dumb, uninformed social media post. Speaking of social media, I want to go to it real quick and let's see here. Couldn't agree any more with you on this issue, bro. Derek Collins, thank you, bro. Assalamu alaikum to you, my brother. Back to the chat room. Look up Robert Kennedy. Look up Robert Kennedy Jr. Novavax. Really? Robert Kennedy Jr. The completely discredited liberal Kennedy family, anti-vax. Like Robert Kennedy was an anti-vaxxer hack before COVID. I didn't listen to him on anything about vaccines before I ever knew anything about coronavirus or COVID-19 or COVID-19 vaccines. Please, Novavax, you just completely discredited yourself. But I will read your other two comments. He also says that he reveals the real numbers for people harmed and died so far in this fake pandemic, fake epidemic. No, it's not an epidemic, Novavax. It's a pandemic. Please look up the definitions of an epidemic versus a pandemic. Please. Makes no difference what you call it. It's still false. No. Just because I prove what you say is not true, Novavax, doesn't mean that I'm wrong. I'm actually right on this one. And I say that with all humility. I mean, I genuinely say that with all humility. I'm offering this show today as a service to you. And I hope, ladies and gentlemen, that you've learned a little bit something. I hope that your heart has been put to ease just a little bit. And I hope that you will join us again next week here on the Rock Worldwide Show. We'll see you next time. Hey, remember to oppose progressivism wherever it rears its ugly head. Illuminate the light of truth. Later.